My father hit me in the face in front of all the guests at my brother's promotion party. My brother clapped his hands and said, "You're the one to blame." No one stopped them, but they didn't know. I made one phone call before morning. Their lives were ruined. I've never liked lofts. Too much bare brick, too little air, and too strong an echo of other people's ambitions. But tonight, I'm forced to smile as the yellowish spotlight picks out every irregularity in the wall, as if to emphasize that even concrete was once liquid. This party is a promotion for my brother, Austin Reeves, my mother came up with. She booked a rented room in Seattle's industrial district, hired a jazz trio, filled glasses with Prosecco, and put me on duty at the champagne table. "You're an accountant. You know how to count to the right penny," she said, not noticing my eyelid flutter. The waiters glided between tables as gently as if they'd been instructed to keep their voices down so as not to overshadow the brilliance of the toasts. The guests, his father's law firm partners, local officials, a couple of third cousins, and a whole club of admiring Austin colleagues, were buzzing like beehives. Their spirits mingled into a heavy cloud that made my throat scratch. I held a bottle of chilled Brut de Brut champagne and pretended to look for a corkscrew, but in truth I was hiding a shiver. The counters inside me were clicking, counting the cost of every second, every smile, every lie. My father stood on a makeshift stage under a warm spotlight. His figure seemed carved in bronze. Broad shoulders, impeccable dark suit, tie the shade of old red wine. Behind his back fluttered a banner with the company's coat of arms, a two-headed eagle holding a scale and a quill. Beneath the banner was the motto, "Integrity over profit." I moved into the shadows so the guests wouldn't see the corner of my mouth twitch at the word integrity. Dad talked about legacy, about how the Reeves family had served Seattle for 3 generations, that each of us was a brick in the fortress wall of the law. He listed Austin's accomplishments, the speed of his career, his new victories in the courts, his successes in the charitable foundation. Each phrase rang a small bell inside me, because I knew how many bogus payments were fueling those victories. I didn't want to ruin the evening, but I had long ago decided that the first public lie would be the point of no return. When the applause died down a little, I walked out from the table, as if to offer my father another glass. As I took a step, I saw Sarah, our cousin, who worked as a clerk at the bank where my father kept his accounts. Our eyes met. Her eyes flashed a plea, "Not here," and she looked away. I realized, if her silence was costing her career, my silence was costing me my life. I sighed, drowning out the pounding of my blood, and spoke. "Daddy, when is our family trust fund going to release a detailed report of charitable expenditures? I need to put the numbers in the tax return." That line sparked like a flash of magnesium. Dad froze, and his hand with his glass went slack. There was silence in the room. Even the jazz trio faltered. I saw the waiter freeze with the tray. Dad took 2 slow steps downstairs, and at each step his face stiffened. He raised his hand and whipped me on the cheek. The sound was so resounding, it was like the ceiling lamps shook. I thought my skin cracked. For a second, no one in the room breathed. Then Austin, the celebrant, turned to me and applauded loudly, almost with pleasure. "It's your own fault," he shouted, as if reciting a line from a play. The pin-drop silence returned. Someone in the distance coughed awkwardly. My mother, standing by the meringue wedding cake, turned abruptly as if she wanted to intervene, but immediately smoothed the tablecloth and pretended to check that the spoons were evenly spaced. The guests looked at me, then at my father, then back to their glasses. The lust for someone else's success was more important than someone else's pain. My cheek burned as if a hot spoon had been placed on it. I put the bottle on the nearest table and, without saying goodbye to anyone, went to the exit. The corridor, decorated with family photos, met me with reflections of past celebrations. Ribbons, diplomas, smiles. At one, I stood with a glass behind everyone. No one noticed me crying then, after another family spending report, which included my first grant. I walked past those frames and felt, with each photo, I regained a piece of my breath. The closet smelled quietly of mothballs. The drop girl with the pink strands seemed to know what was wrong. She held out her coat without a word. I nodded, pulled the fabric over my shoulders, and stepped into the night. Seattle greeted me with freezing rain. The city glittered with the reflections of neon signs, like a storefront where every word sold. I got into my old Subaru, turned on the windshield wipers, and stared at the wounds of light on the wet asphalt. I watched the hall through the storefront window before driving off. The music gradually returned, as if nothing had happened. My father raised his hand, calling everyone to a short technical break. The guests obediently scattered around the room, some laughing heartily at Austin's anecdote about nervous accountants. No one went outside to check on me. That moment was imprinted on my memory like a photograph. If they weren't looking for you, they hadn't seen you before. A memory flashed back. A 12th grade school prom. I, in a dress the shade of a sea wave, went on stage for a diploma, the most reliable classmate. My father sat in the front row and did not applaud. He said later that it was a consolation prize. I decided then that I didn't deserve loud halls. Today I realized I just don't deserve their silence. Taking myself by the wrist, I felt a pulse, a quick morse of anxiety. But behind the anxiety, another rhythm was rising. Excitement, almost a slight euphoria. I thought about how tomorrow the special agent would open my box. How the numbers I'd been pressured with for so long would become weapons of truth. I suddenly felt physically taller than the building where I'd been humiliated. My future was rising above the brick roof like a balloon. The phone was pulling heavily from my pocket. 6 months ago, after a night of my father demanding I take out a loan on myself for family needs, I'd found Clara Hudson, a financial attorney known for bringing big companies to the surface. Clara said there was enough evidence among my files for a federal investigation: offshore payments, bogus consulting, pressure on employees. I was scared at the time, but with each new transfer, the fear melted away like ice in a glass. I opened my favorites list. Clara's number was second after emergency services. I pressed call. Before the buzzer rang, I had almost changed my mind. Somewhere deep was that schoolgirl who had been forced by her father to reread her expense diary in front of the whole class. But the call cut through the rain. "Madison?" Clara's voice was as steady as a ruler. "The folder is ripe," I said. "There are more bills than we expected. I'll bring them in the morning." "Bring them by 8 o'clock," she said. "Be ready, it's going to be an avalanche." I clutched the receiver, stroked my hot cheek with my fingers. In the rearview mirror, the scarlet streak looked like a burn. There was a crumpled napkin with the banner logo on it. I held it to my face. The damp paper smelled like cheap vanilla disinfectant. Dad liked everything sterile, except his conscience. The road home was becoming a tunnel between the past and the future. 2 green signals in a row. Rare luck, as if the city was pushing me. Drive while you can. I remembered my childhood in the suburbs, how my father had checked my notebooks, making me keep track of the family expenses, and measured out exactly 3 generous spoonfuls of mashed potatoes for dinner, explaining that otherwise, the family would go into the negative. That lesson turned into a lifelong habit of calculation. The apartment greeted me with silence. Real sound, not the kind of sound you get with earplugs. I turned on the floor lamp. The warm light lingered on the pictureless walls. No frames, just empty hooks. I took off my coat, pulled a metal box from the safe, full of thumb drives, printouts, correspondence, accounting forms. The papers smelled like toner and thunderstorms. Each sheet was a drop of blood squeezed from my paycheck. I spread the files out on the floor like pocket mirrors. On one was a chain of transfers through the Bahamas. On another, my disability insurance policy, where my father's firm was the beneficiary. Next to it, a report of donations to a foundation supporting veterans whose registry didn't exist. I ran my palm over the paper. Sometimes justice weighs exactly as much as a stack of paperwork. From somewhere downstairs came the smell of freshly roasted coffee. The 24-hour cafe was running toasters. That aroma settled on top of the anxiety like a warm blanket. I pulled on my sweatpants, turned on the kettle. Putting down my mint mug, I opened my laptop and started writing myself a nightly letter. From now on, every number is my voice. I listed facts, dates, amounts, so I wouldn't get confused in the court corridor tomorrow. When I finished, I checked the character counter. An accountant can't sleep without an even balance. The door glass to the balcony was covered with tiny drops. I stepped out barefoot. Downstairs, trucks roared by without so much as a wink. There was a release in the noise. The world is huge, and my family is just a small, greedy machine. Suddenly, I remembered an old algebra lesson. If you remove the lies from a system of equations, the solutions become obvious. When I returned, I found a notification on my phone. An automatic transfer from the Family Foundation. A bonus for helping to organize the evening. The sum of $13. 13 is the number of bad luck in some culture, but to me, it's a sign of accuracy. I clicked accept. Every transaction they make will become evidence. Let them pay for their own exposure. Midnight passed. I sat on the floor, leaning against the couch, and felt my cheek slowly cool. This burn will turn into a pale mark, but a rock is already growing inside me. Perhaps tomorrow I'll be scared and shivering. Perhaps I'll hear my father threaten that no court will believe an ungrateful daughter. But today, while the rain pounded steady like a crisp metronome, I allowed myself a fantasy. The word family is not a commodity, and if they tried to buy my vote, they underestimated the price. I fell asleep to the hum of the air conditioners in a neighboring building and dreamed a dream. A windowless sandcastle where the water brought seashells instead of bricks. I was building a new level of fractions and percentages, and I pinned a flag on top. Zero silence. The wave would roll in and wash away the lies, leaving an empty but honest shore. I woke up long before dawn, the ceiling still gray, the street rustling with single tires. The smell of damp paper hangs in the air. The open safe has emptied its secret. My cheek is sore, as if a hot coin had been stitched into it. The kettle is boiling, and the whistle sounds like a siren. Time's up! I pour the large leaf tea, take the metal box, a heavy square heart, and walk out to the stairwell. The elevator is old, with brass buttons, going slow, as if giving me a chance to go back. I don't go back. The car is warm. The interior smells like humid tropics from a freshener, and this perfume falseness emphasizes the truth in the trunk. It's 4 in the morning. There's almost no city, just inky asphalt, sparse streetlights, and the wet signs of 24-hour diners. The radio is blaring about the Dow's plunge. I want to laugh. My personal index collapsed yesterday when my father confused strength with power. The hands on the steering wheel remember a different grip. Flashback. I'm 10. My father teaches me how to hold a paddle on a family fishing trip. For 20 minutes, he makes me repeat the motion until my palms bleed. Precision is more expensive than pain, he pronounced then. Later, he demanded the same precision in my calculations, but no one was embarrassed by the pain. I park outside a 24-hour coffee shop in the Fremont neighborhood. The front window burns with golden light, like a centuries-old candle. The barista with the crab tattooed on his neck recognizes me. I come here at night when I close out quarterly reports. He silently holds out 2 lattes in reusable mugs, knowing I'm against disposable plastic. I pay with a bill, and a sudden thought comes to mind. This is my money, not the family's. Freedom in tangible change. Taking a sip, I get in the car, and a new memory springs to mind. 14th birthday, my father brings an envelope. Inside is a bank card in my name. Learn responsibility, he says. The balance should always add up. A month later, the report arrives. The card is minus. The purchase of an expensive suit for Austin. I pay the interest, and my father praises my brother for his solid appearance. The Park Avenue street smells of wet maple trees. Clara's brick office building is signless, like an underground printing press of truth. Поднимаюсь пешком. Один пролет, второй, третий. С каждым шагом стройные колонны воспоминаний рассыпаются. The smell of coffee, paper, and clear determination greets me. The lights at the reception are not on, but Clara is already behind the glass door of the conference room, her hair tied up in a strict bun, her laptop and a stack of colorful post-its on the table. Heavy? Points to the box. It weighs like 20 years of silence, I answer, and my lips tremble, but more from the morning chill than from fear. She pulls out the folders, puts them in an aligned row. The monitor comes alive with charts: orange peaks for offshore, blue for loans, purple for donations. I sit down, my mug sticking to my palm. I should wipe off the condensation, but I can't take my eyes off the numbers. Flashback: I'm 16. My mother is brewing chamomile with a morning migraine, and I catch her gaze. It's a plea to don't argue with your father. That same spring, my father makes me sign a surety bond for a loan to repair the boat. The family ship must be leak-free, he said. When the boat is sold, the loan remains. Clara reads my stock slang. Anchored profit, hidden receivables, and nods like a conductor catching the right tempo. She opens a window with scans. The signature of her father's brother, Uncle Henry, quickly disappears from the list of shareholders. Clara clicks her mouse, zooms in on the screen. The coloring in the document is different in saturation, an obvious montage. Henry was stripped of his share when he quarreled over unaccounted-for dividends, but technically got out voluntarily. Have you ever talked to Henry? Clara asks. He invited me to his shop about 7 years ago. I recall the smell of machine oil and scattered steel bolts. He offered to show me his papers, but my father found out and forbade it. He said that other people's grudges are not a family matter. Clara writes Henry's name on an orange post-it, the word witness next to it. Then she opens a letter from her father's former colleague, Brian Foster. It's only 2 lines, but I read louder than any legal treatise. If the truth comes out, I'm ready to talk. I have copies of the contracts. The signature trembles like a seam on broken glass. I realize we're not alone. There are people whose scars match mine. The trembling in my hands subsides. We work at length. Clara asks dates, names, amounts. I answer, absent-mindedly reciting numbers down to the last dime. I've never been good at forgetting numbers. The early light flashes through the window, peachy like creme brulee, but in that sweetness I feel the steel of the coming day. My mother calls me. The screen pops up, home! I stare at the vibrating machine, don't answer. Flashbacks strike. I'm 19! My father yells that I'm living in debt, and I'm paying, asking for a lower monthly payment. My mother hugs me, whispering quietly, "We're a family! We're looking for a compromise!" The compromise, then, was that I sold my laptop and moved myself to a used cell phone. Clara places a thin file on the table for me. Photocopies of loan agreements, bank letters, electronic receipts. She opens the file with an analysis. The interest on my loans funded my father's firm's insurance payments, and some of the transfers went to Austin's Corporate Innovation Awards. I see the pencil notation, "Use by family member as shady guarantor." It's as if an old notebook of childhood drawings is catching fire in my chest. Home, sunshine, family, now all in a soot of numbers. My blood pressure is rising. I have to get up. I walk to the window, open the sash. The city is buzzing. Buses, the first streetcar, truck signals. That hum feels like the heartbeat of the system we're about to dissect. Clara comes up quietly behind me, puts a hot mug in my hand. Drink. You need to hold on. The bitter, sugarless flavor is like the truth. But I don't wrinkle my nose. She hangs post-its on the wall. Blue for people, orange for documents, pink for dates. It turns out to be a map of the war, where the arrows are not red, but graphite. We have not gunpowder, but numbers. Suddenly, I remember. I am 24, the day of my first promotion. I bring home a bottle of wine. My father asks me what the raise will be. When he finds out the amount, he says, "You'll put half of it in the family account, and we're investing in Austin's future." In that instant, I realized that my earnings have a cloned twin, my debt. I return to my desk, pick up a pen, and sign the application to turn over the materials to the IRS. My hand glides confidently. I am not a victim, I am a witness. Behind my back, the past is twisted into a tight roll, but in front of me, a new statement unfolds, still clean. Clara puts everything in a fireproof case, locks it with a code lock. These are other weights, she says. Not bricks in the wall of a family, but blocks of the foundation of a new life. She holds out a therapist's business card, the fine print working with the trauma of economic abuse, as a goodbye. I put it in my pocket. Up until this point, it seemed that accountability heals better than talk. But apparently, there are numbers that don't add up to an accounting entry. As I walk down the stairs, I hear the phone vibrate again. Mother. I mute it. I'm not ready to save her fear. Outside, the rain intensifies. Droplets pound on the roof of the car, like a calculating machine counting the seconds to the future. I drive home through Pike Place Market. Fishermen are laying out ice. Vendors are baking cinnamon muffins. The smell of cinnamon makes me suddenly tingle. I think of the morning before my 8th grade graduation, when my mother baked buns for the school fair and my father said that home baking is cheaper than teacher gifts. He always knew how to translate emotion into economy. I park, walk up to my apartment. There's a white envelope in the mailbox, unmarked. Inside is a bank receipt. My account has received a transfer from the family foundation. Compensation for the organization of the holiday. The amount is $13.13, exactly what a bottle of cheap champagne costs at the supermarket. I smile. Without knowing it, they have paid for a symbol of their own collapse. I leave the receipt on the refrigerator as a souvenir. The transaction number is 1001, easy to remember for the investigation. The house is warm and quiet. I open my notebook, write a note to myself. Guilt is also a loan, the interest on which my parents have accrued for years. I save it, encrypt it. I glance at the clock. It's barely past 9 in the morning, and I've lived a decade-long day. I lie down on the carpet, listening to the silence. Breathing becomes easier. From sleep, an image comes to mind. I'm small, holding a calculator. 0 is flashing on the screen. I press plus, minus, multiply. I get the same 0. Only now I realize that the empty space is not a loss, but a clean start. The shower is ringing with jets, washing away the sticky smell of paper. Condensation on the mirror, revealing my face without the insurance tape. The red stripe on my cheek is almost gone, but it is the invisible barcode of my determination. Before I go out to get groceries, I check the plans for tomorrow. A meeting with the tax agents. 5 people, 5 protocols, 5 plot twists. 5 is Austin's favorite number. He used to say that a 5 was the symbol of a winner. I love that it's working against him now. I open the window, the humid air carrying the distant hum of a ship's horn, and suddenly, I remember Uncle Henry, who was in the Navy. I'm going to find him and have him tell me how my father wrote off his share. History loves to open old holds. I dial Clara. Thank you for this morning. She answers dryly. It's just foreplay. It'll be louder tomorrow. I hang up, leaning against the windowsill. The rain fades, leaving translucent tracks on the glass. They resemble the lines of a ledger. Once these lines were a cell. Now they are a trajectory to freedom. The alarm hadn't rung yet, but the phone was already buzzing. Missed calls, new letters. First, from the IRS. Unscheduled audit of Reeves and Partners initiated. Second, from the bank. Request to block accounts filed. Third, from an unknown sender. You don't know who you're messing with. I delete it, but the tension stays. At 5 a.m., I head to my father's office. Wet asphalt mirrors the rain, drumming on the windshield like a prelude. In the back seat, a recorder, in my pocket. 2 spare batteries. Clara told me, record everything. A block away, reporters set up tripods. Cops stretch tape, keeping to the shadows. I hide in the courtyard of the coffee shop across the street, taking an espresso. The bitterness will come in handy, so I don't confuse adrenaline with fear. Above the rooftops, dawn begins to remove its night filter. The skyscraper's glass reflects the pale pink of morning, and nearby, like an ink blot, the Reeves and Partners logo darkens. At 6:57, a dark minivan pulls up. Men in business coats get out in pairs. Not SWAT, but the rigor of their movements betrays the importance of the mandate. I press record. I can see the office foyer through the glass wall. The receptionist grabs the phone, eyes widening as the men hold out the warrant. The elevator doors open, and 5 IRS officers step inside at once. A moment later, they are followed by Austin. He's in an expensive suit, but his tie is askew. The employee shows him the suspension order. The auditor's voice is soft, but each word is short, like a line from a stapler. Temporarily revoked access to office devices. Surrender your badge. The brother tries to smile, but the corners of his mouth quiver. He grabs the paper, tears it in half, pieces falling like confetti at someone else's party. The marketing associate picks up her phone and snaps a picture. Austin rushes toward her, but a security guard, dry as a jacklever, comes between them. The videotape later goes into a corporate chat room with the caption, "Who applauded slams the door." It's stuffy in my car, even though the heat is off. I'm breathing like I'm after a sprint, just watching the first domino fall. Dad shows up half an hour later. His steps are as if frozen, his pants are rumpled, his hair lacks a perfect parting. He holds the clipboard, clutching it to his chest like a shield. The auditor holds out to him a long list of documents, the rationale for the audit, a list of articles. Father interrupts, asks him to solve the misunderstanding in the office. In response, he hears, "Our job is to ensure transparency." Father's fingers squeeze the clipboard. He makes a call. "Get Judge Talbot up here, stat." A crunch is heard from the recorder. It's me gripping the device tighter. Along with the word urgent comes a memory. A school fair, I'm 12, telling my mother I want to buy a colorful notebook for myself. My father hears and hisses, "You want a colorful one, you have to earn it." From that day on, I write down my expenses in a cheap notebook pad to the ground. I touch my cheek. The ruby palm print is gone, but my skin remembers the heat. I open my laptop to keep from falling into a fever of emotion. The mail is pouring with letters. The supplier of the company informs about pause in cooperation. The investment fund withdraws investments. I see a letter from Lisa Telfer. We studied at the same accounting courses. The subject line is "Reading the News." She writes that her parents lost their home 2 years ago after loan restructuring through her father's attorneys. Attached is a file, forms of contracts, signatures, stamps. I rock the document. It's as heavy as a wet sheet. In the broken light of the setting sun, Austin is led out of the building. No badge, no laptop, no access rights. A reporter holds up a microphone. "Mr. Reeves, is it true you're being charged with failure to pay taxes?" Austin calls for the driver, but no one comes out. The firm's car is blocked by a chain. The auditor has put a seal on it. The brother yells into the driver's phone, "Where are you?" then slams his fist on the glass. Fist slips, leaves a ragged knuckle. The blood stain on the glass is like an ink mark, red balance instead of black. I go to the car. My mother is calling for the 4th time. I answer, so that there are no illusions. "Yes. Your father has put an arrest on the servers. They can dig up everything. Please talk to them." "I already have," I reply. Papers speak more accurately than tears. "Maddie," my voice becomes convulsive, "you know he did this for us." For us? Or for control? There's nothing but a hiss in the phone. I'm disconnecting. In the parking lot, I see a familiar face. Sarah, the cousin, the same one who brought the documents yesterday. She stands surrounded by reporters. My stomach clenches with anxiety. What if she's being pressed? I come closer and I hear her say, "I can't keep quiet any longer." "Yes, my signatures are forged. The loans were made without my consent." Her voice is shaking, but every word is a nail. Journalists alternate questions. "How many years did this go on? Who used the funds?" Sarah answers, shows a folder of statements. I feel a mixture of pride and guilt for her. She is risking her career. I walk over, quietly place my hand on her elbow, whisper, "Thank you." Sarah nods, and for the first time, there is more fire than fear in her eyes. By evening, Clara sends a text. "The IRS found a new set of contracts for your tin." I open the attachment, see contracts for consulting services for an oil company's six-figure sums. The date is the day I was in the hospital with pneumonia. My father signed the contract for me, while the doctors put me on IVs. My hand shakes so that the coffee in my mug ripples thickly like tar. I sit down at my desk, turning on the yellowish lamp so the whiteness of the monitor doesn't blind me. I double-check the tables. Date, amount, offshore, signature. The numbers are my soldiers, slim but tired. I assign a code to each. F1 for Austin payments, F2 for fake consulting, F3 for insurance. There's still a kid inside who wants to make sure he's done his homework, or else his father will call him lazy in front of everyone. At 9 p.m., the father calls. The screen reads, "Father home." I instinctively straighten up like a ruler. A second of hesitation, to accept or not. And I press the green handset, turn on the recorder. "Madison," my voice is hoarse as gravel. "You loved your family. What's this whole circus for?" "For the truth," I answer. "For the people you took more than money from." He laughs, but it cuts like a rusty knife. "The truth is written by the victors, and we can still win. Withdraw, and I'll close your loans. Mine or the ones you opened on me?" No more drama. Judge Talbot's hearing tomorrow. One word and it's all gone. The word has already been spoken. The word is enough. He's breathing hard. "Then don't cry when everyone turns away." He drops it and passes out. I close my eyes, step into the bathroom, let the cold water run over my hands until the heat drains away. I recall the therapist's words. A crisis needs an anchor. The anchor is breath. In for 4, hold, out for 4. My chest steadies. Thoughts line up like an accounting column after reconciliation. By late afternoon, my mother enters, mascara streaked, hands trembling, clutching a box she unearthed from the garage. She sinks to the kitchen floor and spills its contents, damp, sticky folders, stamps smeared into blurs. "I thought they were insurance papers," she whispers, palms opening in guilty surrender. I kneel and lift the top sheet. Under beneficiary is my father's name, under guarantor mine. "Did you know or not?" I ask. "I suspected," she sobs. "But if the family falls apart, who am I then?" "You are you," I answer, and for the first time, I allow myself to touch her shoulder. A family is not a suspension bridge held together by one false conduit. We go over the papers hour after hour. Mother trembles more and more. Each sheet is like a needle under the nail of her conscience. In the middle of the night, she rises, pulls a credit card out of her purse, puts it on the table. "This is your debt," she says. "The account I opened for you 2 years ago, at your father's behest. I'm sorry. We'll cancel that account, I promise. The important thing is you've decided to talk." It's almost morning. The TV is blaring the news in the background. The anchor with a serious face. "Exclusive, allegations against one of Seattle's oldest law firms." On the screen, a father in the semi-darkness of an underground parking garage. He tries to break into the newsroom. The security guards push him away. The camera picks up the cry of "political order." He lashes out, grabs the tripod. The reporter recoils. The frame wobbles. The picture fractures. But the audience has had enough. The stately lawyer's mask of calm has been torn off. The mother freezes, pressing her palms to her cheeks. New tears come to her eyes, but not from the usual fear, but from the collision with reality. "Has he become like this?" she whispers. "He's always been like this," I answer softly. "It's just that the cameras are around now." As she sits there, as if trying on a new truth, the phone in my hand vibrates. It's a text from Judy. "Gave our files to the reporter who's been digging into your firm. The story will be on the national news tomorrow. Hang in there." I feel a chill run down my spine. The dominoes have rolled across state lines. The clock reads 4:10. My mother falls asleep on the couch with her arms around my knees. I cover her with a blanket. I go to the window. The streets are deserted. The rain has stopped. The streetlights reflect in the wet asphalt like rows of equal signs. For the first time in many days, there is no smell of burning in the air, only freshness, like after a thunderstorm. The owner of the rental house, Mr. Stan, wore rubberized flip-flops and smelled of machine oil. When we moved in, he looked up from the newspaper only for a second to mutter, "Two rules: no smoking in the kitchen and pay before the calendar flips over." We bailed him out in cash. Mother's money trembled in her fingers. In her world, bills always yearned for safety deposit boxes. The apartment was filled with the smell of old onions, forgotten by the previous tenants. A rusty table stood in the corner, a cracked mug labeled Best Daddy resting on it. My mother flinched, but I turned the mug upside down and placed a cactus I'd bought at a 2-for-1 sale. For the first time, we set aside an extra dollar so we didn't have to discuss who it belonged to. My morning routes now traveled between the apartment and the federal building. The investigator, Mr. Chen, a flinty man with a dud voice, asked questions, sometimes repeating them as if checking to see if my answer would change. I recalled exact dates, the smells in the rooms, the size of the transfers down to the cent. Each protocol ended dryly. "Thank you for your cooperation, Ms. Reeves." But the dryness didn't erase the slight compassion in his eyes. He could see the guilt shrinking back on my shoulders as I carried it like an old backpack. After the interrogations, I ran along the Duwamish Canal. The asphalt danced under my soles, and the murky water breathed sulfur and salt. At first, I thought of the news headlines, of my father's tirades to the press, but after a mile, the thoughts fell like leaves. All that was left was the wheeze of my breathing, the beating of my heart, music where there is no counting. When I stopped under the bridge to stretch my calves, the rain pounded on my hair, and I felt washed rather than soiled. In the evening, my mother returned from work with stains of chlorine on the elbows of her robe. She quietly put the bag on the floor, as if she was afraid of waking poverty. "Today, I was entrusted with the post-operative therapy department," she said. "I was bandaging a teenager, and he held my hand and said he felt no pain." Her eyes glistened, not from tears, but from surprise. The gratitude of strangers rang louder than the praise of her former socialite friends. We ate rice and beans while she described the hospital ward where the TV is bolted to the ceiling so patients look upward instead of down. For the first time, I heard my mother not through money's filter, but as a woman with a weary yet beating heart. A week later, we opened the box of family albums. I needed photographs for the investigation. She brushed the glossy images of my brother and me at the firm's presidential dinner and whispered, "We lived by someone else's script, like the posters." I answered softly, "Now we have a black and white draft, but it's ours." Returning from a run, I dropped my keys between concrete slabs. Neighbor Jacob, the fireman, appeared, shined his phone's light, lay flat, and fished them out with 2 fingers. "It's bad luck to lose your keys," he said, shaking off his palms. "It's bad luck to depend on someone else's keys," I countered. He grinned, asking if I was running for sport or for escape. "For the right to not hear my father in my ears," I answered honestly. "I run so I don't have to hear the fire siren alarm when duty is over." He got serious. "So we exchange lives without heroism." The first date was accidental. The lights went out for the whole block at night. Jacob dragged the gasoline generator to the driveway, and I gave him instant noodles with dried mushrooms, which was my entire dinner. We sat on the fire escape, the generator rumbling like an old tractor, the wind howling in the distance. I talked about my father's schematics. He talked about how he'd once been stuck in an elevator with a teenage arsonist who'd been mourning a suit and not talking about guilt. I noticed that I hadn't judged this teenager more harshly than I'd judged myself, and I was afraid of my own softness. "You know," Jacob said, "the ashes aren't the end. It's just a reminder that something was burning. The next morning, I was summoned to the Finance Commission. I had to explain the hidden transactions of the last 7 years. A windowless room, cold light bulbs. 3 experts studied my spreadsheets, asked the same questions in different words, and I answered, holding onto the pen like a subway handrail. At the end, the gray-haired auditor handed me a document. File an application for restitution. This money can be returned. The words stabbed me. To give it back means to hold the numbers again. Would I be able to let them go when the debt closed? On the way home, I bought a cheap loaf and a can of oat milk. At the cash register, a man in a jacket glanced at my name on the card. Relative of that lawyer? X? I replied. He snorted and turned away, a familiar reaction. But I caught myself that my heart didn't fail, but stayed beating steady. Later, at home, I shared the episode with my mother, expecting another wave of shame. She shrugged. Let them look. It's their X-ray, not our diagnosis. At night, I woke up to the crunch of branches outside my window and wondered how many families like ours lived in houses that were decorated with someone else's signature instead of a foundation. Sometimes I heard Jacob's footsteps on the stairs. He was returning from a fire, and imagined the walls burning and exposing the empty frames. Fire is honest. It shows where there is no substance. One day the mother came in early. A patient had been transferred. The shift had been cut. She came in and saw me laying out the paperwork for a new lawsuit. Do you think we'll get all the money back? She asked. Money, give or take, I replied. First, I want to regain the credibility of my name. Madison Reeves is an accountant without a family shield. An accountant with her own accounts, I corrected. That same evening, an envelope with no return address was in the mailbox. The paper was heavy, the ink embossed. I instantly recognized the character of my father's stroke. Inside were 6 paragraphs of manipulation mixed with sweet threat. Come home. Admit it's all a misunderstanding. Austin's already up nights. His hands are shaking. You're killing his career. I'm willing to close your debts and pay restitution if you retract your statement. I read the letter once, twice, 3 times. With each reading, the lines grew thinner and my back straighter. At the end, my father inscribed, "Family is more important than the IRS." I threw my head up and, without thinking, tore the sheet into small squares. The paper confetti fell to the floor like chop notes. Then I unclenched my fists, my fingers turning white. The tears came later, when the scraps of letter were already spinning in the garbage chute. I let them flow. The salt came out. My face felt lighter. My mother heard me sobbing, came over, sat next to me, but didn't hug me. She knew that hugs could be the same chains if they were forced. We sat in silence, absorbing the silence. I noticed for the first time that the walls of the apartment no longer felt like a prison. They became pages where we wrote down small victories. A couple days later, the news came. The court had denied my father bail until the damages were assessed. Austin was offered a negotiation, a reduced sentence for a full confession. I read the message on the screen and felt a space unfold inside. It housed me before the slap, me after, me to come. The space didn't ring. It quietly breathed. In the evening, I went for a run and saw Jacob rinsing streaks of foam off the hose. He waved his hand and I slowed down. "How are the courts?" he asked. "Like working out." "It hurts, but the endurance grows," I replied. "You know," he said, "we put out fires with water, but without touching the embers. Otherwise, it starts all over again." I nodded. He took off his glove and held out his palm. "If you need coffee in the middle of the night, knock. No promises, no bronze." I shook his hand. It was warm, but it wasn't life-saving, just human. I walked home through the park. The streetlights splashed yellow light on the wet asphalt. I took a deep breath and smelled pine needles, bread, and distant chimneys. This mixture smelled not of a childhood home, but of a future home. No place yet, but the air had already been chosen. In the kitchen, my mother sat with papers. She was finishing a statement that she was ready to testify against her husband. She signed it with a pen with cat ears given by a patient. I need your signature as a witness, she asked. I signed it. The ink glinted. We exchanged glances, and in those glances there was everything: grief, fear, fatigue, bits of hope. The cold March morning smells of chlorine, coffee, and damp moving boxes. I wake up to the clatter of gutters. A neighbor is patching slate on the roof. From behind the thin walls, I can hear the Spanish radio station pulsing on the first floor. The announcer's voice stretches the vowels, and I catch the rhythm for a breathing workout. The room is small, but our belongings have already settled in. A tiny cactus on the windowsill, a printout of the interrogation schedule on the wall, a running plan for the month next to it. Each sheet is secured with duct tape, as if I'm marking the territory of my newborn freedom. My mother closes the door quietly in the hallway. She's going to the morning shift at the hospital. She's taken a part-time job, so she won't be afraid to knock on the neighbor's door for sugar. I see her profile, shadows under her eyes, but her shoulders are squared. Instead of expensive cashmere, it's a cheaply tailored jacket with reflective stripes. Last night, she came home from work at 5:30, hiding a crumpled piece of paper in her pocket. A patient, a pensioner, had given her drawing of lilacs, so that the sister would not forget to smell kindness. Mother hung the drawing on the refrigerator, and I realized she gets gifts not bought on my credit. I boil oatmeal on water and read the mail. 4 letters have arrived overnight. The first is from the county lawyer. Re-interview due to signature recognition. Take passport, driver's license, and any manuscript samples from the 18th through 24th years. The second is a press release from the tax department. The ongoing investigation has been expanded. The amount of alleged damages has been increased. Third, a notice from the bank. 2 new loans have been discovered on you, made 3 years ago. Fourth, a letter from Lisa Telfair. Another victim has been found and is willing to testify. I feel a familiar panic rising, like I'm holding too many plates and one will fall out. I remember the breathing technique. Inhale for 4 counts, freeze for 2, exhale for 6. Panic peters out, giving way to warm fatigue. Before the interrogation, I go out for a jog along the Duwamish Canal. The air smells of wet metal and boards. On the left bank are boarded-up warehouses. On the right bank is graffiti in the shape of a winged hourglass. Time is not for sale. My body resists, but my heart gradually taps steady. Rain falls glassy across the bridge, drops prickling my skin as if the world is giving me an ice shower. I meet Jacob at the turnaround point, spreading sand around a fire hydrant to keep cars from splashing the driveway. His hand waves without further ado. I nod. The pounding of my heart is louder than conversation. The federal building is as cold as a fish warehouse. Mr. Chen is waiting with a pile of printouts. His suit is always strict gray. They say he keeps to one shade to save elections for cases. He lays sheets in front of me with Madison Reeves' signatures by the hundreds. Some I remember, bank transfers for college housing, and some I'm seeing for the first time. Are you familiar with the document? Known but the signature looks similar. So do counterfeit bills, I say. We're checking the dates. One contract has the day I was hospitalized with a high fever. The photo in my medical records shows me lying under an IV. Chen puts the photo to the document. The contrast of truth and forgery is jarring. Your family used your illness to cash in a loan, he says, and his voice quivers for the first time. I nod as if this isn't about me. There's a quiet explosion inside, but I hold my face. Chen makes a note in pencil. Probable forgery. Victim was physically absent. As I walk out, I see Austin on the couch in the hallway. He's in a dark hoodie, hood pulled up, hands clasped together. There's indifference on the guards' faces, but I know my brother is here for pre-trial negotiations. Our gazes cross. He lowers his eyes first. My cheek suddenly remembers that slap like a cat arching its back. I pass by without a word, but my hand treacherously trembles. Will he take a step toward the truth, or remain shackled by paternal pride? By the elevator, Sarah approaches me. She's wearing an austere jacket, her hair in a tight bun. I gave a full statement, she whispers. But your father hired a private investigator to look into my credit history. Are you clean? A few overdue medical bills, Sarah admits, ashamed. He'll twist it into fraud. I take her elbow and whisper, Truth is louder. We'll finish your defense. She nods and disappears into the restroom. Through the glass, I see her washing her face at the sink. The day fractures. I buy a simple bowl of rice, spinach, and egg, sit by the waterfront, and watch tugboats drag barges, while shops in the distance smell of rubber and winches clank, rough, honest sounds of metal on metal without the whisper of silks. I jot in my notebook. The factory's noise is more honest than the saloon's whisper. They never teach that in elite schools. In the evening, my mother comes in her makeshift uniform, gray pants and a t-shirt gifted by a colleague with the words, "A miracle of her own." She sets a box of scones on the table, explaining the bakery below is running a volunteer day. Free pastries in exchange for returning empty packages to recycle. We've become debt recycling, I laugh. She smiles, but immediately frowns. We have a veteran being brought in tomorrow after a stroke. I'm afraid I'm going to shake my hand. Your hands are trusted by people in comas. It's more than a title of secular benefactor, I reply and touch her palm. Her skin is dry but warm. They turn off the heat at night. I can hear air being sucked in through the pipes. Mr. Stan's electric fireplace in the hallway is humming, but it doesn't reach us. I get up, put my jacket on over my pajamas, and walk over to the junction box. Jacob's fumbling around, putting his coat on over his uniform. Condensation on the tire, he explains. Let's warm up the wire. We hold the flashlights, and he gently cleans the contacts. There's a slight crackle, then the hallway lights come on, steam billowing beneath them. Thank you, I say. You'll notice the smoke faster without lights, he replies. I can smell smoke. The wick of the gas heater in the next apartment. Jacob goes to ventilate, and I follow. Old Lillian opens the door, coughing. We put her on a stool by the window, me holding the blanket, Jacob shutting off the gas. The fire didn't happen, but pride burns in my chest. We prevented another loan of pain. I return home at dawn and find an envelope in the mailbox. Inside is a letter from my father, stamped by a law firm. The text is long, ornate. Family is the highest value. Austin is emotionally exhausted. Repentance will help shorten his sentence. At the end, I'm willing to transfer all assets to you if you reconsider what you said. Black lettering adds, a copy of the letter has been sent to the media. I realize he's turning blackmail into public clemency, making himself look like an old man who's been left behind. I feel a surge of rage. It's not a letter, but old hubris packaged in sentiment. I reach for the scissors, cut the envelope into ribbons, and throw it in the trash. But immediately, a lump in my throat comes up. Change requires mourning the past. I crouch on the floor, wrapping my arms around my knees. Tears burn, not for my father, but for myself, who wanted his approval so badly. Through my sobs, I hear dawn creeping in from outside, a macro queen bird trying out its voice. Half an hour later, the door opens. Mother, returning from her shift, finds me on the floor. Without a word, sits down next to me, turns on the tail, tells the story of a patient, Thomas, a former chrysanthemum salesman. Thomas, after surgery, remembered the varieties of flowers and gave the nurses fictional tea. His imaginary cups warmed the sick ward more than our batteries. Mother says, goodness can be paper, porcelain, even imaginary. But it's hotter than any last name. I sob, and the salty ball inside dissolves in her story. It's court news day. I turn on the local channel. An announcer in a blue jacket announces that the court has denied my father bail. Austin is rumored to have met with prosecutors, looking for deals. The frame cuts to a silhouette of the mansion, windows boarded up, lawn black with weeds. The reporter pronounces, the Reeves family's stone fortress turned out to be cardboard. Freeze frame, next news item. After lunch, I go to the bank. I need an account with no shady bundles. The junior manager, a girl with blue strands, recognizes the last name, but asks professionally, "Trust account or individual?" "Just individual. I'm responsible for myself." She enters the data, smiles. "Open. Balance is $347. That's a hopeful start." I smile back. Hope is cheaper than gold, but more expensive than deception. On my way back, I meet Sarah, carrying a stack of papers. The corner of her lips quiver. "The detective found my overdue dental work," she says. "The press will say I'm financially irresponsible." "Irresponsible is a traitor," I object. "You tell the lawyer, your debt of $3,000 is disproportionate to their 7-figure kidnappings." We take a picture of ourselves in front of the graffiti, "Time is not for sale," and send it to the lawyer, Clara. She will attach it to the motion for witness protection. Everyone needs an anchor. Let it be graffiti and 2 stubborn faces. Jacob invites me to night tea at the fire station. I bring oatmeal cookies, he brings a metal thermos. We sit on the footplate of the truck, with a crew on duty inside. He shows off a collection of burned badges. Each one taken after a fire was extinguished. To remember. I share the numbers of my smallest debt. $35 for an overdue library book my mother once paid for. We laugh. My first honest debts, his first honest wounds. I return home. The room feels warmer. Mr. Stan replaced the heating pipe without raising rent. On the table lies a letter from the prosecutor. The final hearing is in 6 weeks. At the bottom, witness Reeves Madison must submit a final report. I breathe. 6 weeks is a marathon. In my notebook I write, 1,000 words daily, 5 miles running, 3 thank yous. To myself, to my mother, to the world. The page smells like cheap paper, but feels richer than a checkbook. Before bed, my mother sets up a thrifted $5 projector lantern. Stars scatter across the ceiling. We lie on our mattresses as constellations form from broken illusions. "What if I fail in court?" I whisper. "Then we'll be the wrong star," she says, "and still shine for those who follow." The sky over downtown looks like a scorched film of an old movie. Gray, mercury-stained. TV cameras stand around the Palace of Justice, tripods rustling, reporters adjusting microphones. I hold a yellow folder in my hand, an accounting report inside, stitched with satin thread. Clara paces beside me, steady as a metronome. Her mother clutches a notebook of duty records in her fingers, as if other people's diagnoses could support her voice. The lobby smells of wax and damp wood. On the marble wall, the words "Lex et Veritas," law and truth, seem like an ironic aphorism, but today they are not someone else's motto for me, but a route to freedom. The courtroom is spacious, dark wood, soft light, acoustics that catch whispers. Jurors take their seats. 9 unfamiliar faces, 2 empty chairs, still to be filled. My father, in an expensive suit, sits at the defense table, pondering each fold. His gaze slides over me like a knife blade on ice. I turn my back to the clock, the hand jumps to 10:30, and I feel a pulse in my heels. The hearing begins. Judge Linton, a woman with a face of calm granite, opens the case. Father rises to declare that the charges are politically motivated. The voice sounds like the old Reeves and Associates commercials, but I feel a tremor at the tip, an echo of the empty corridors where Associates once walked. The prosecutor presents the materials: digital transfer traces, Sarah's testimony, Judy's testimony, copies of my credits. The judge nods as if counting the blows of a gavel. The defense asks to exclude some of the evidence, citing emotional bias. The judge denies the motion, the first nail. The witness is called. My name is called into the microphone and rolls around the room. I rise, feeling my heel resonate in the parquet. I swear to tell the truth. The words are dry, but my tongue doesn't stick to my palate like before. The prosecutor asks me to summarize the report. I open the folder, sheet by sheet, tables, diagrams. Every number here is the date I, Madison Reeves, lost part of my future. I begin flatly. Here are the loans I took out without my knowledge. This is my disability insurance policy, signed the day I was on IV fluids. And these are offshore payments, written off the night I got my accounting degree. I read aloud the amounts, the transcripts, the references to bank details. At each round sum, I hear the jury whispering. The room gets hot. Someone opens a notebook. Someone squeezes a pencil until it crunches. I continue. I was the secret bail bondsman. Whenever my father said the family was a venture capital fund, he was referring to my signatures. Prosecutor asks questions, confirming dates, addresses, file finds. The judge asks me to explain how this has affected my life. I catch Clara's eye, a nod of encouragement, and tell her, the first mortgage denial by the bank, someone else's insurance on my death, the minus on my card when the interest was burning up. The defense stands up. My father asks me a question. His voice tries to be fatherly. Isn't it true that I paid for your university semesters? I graduated with a grant, I answer. You made the payment to yourself and the debt to me. A chair creaks in the hall. My father blushes. You didn't lose your roof. I lost confidence in my own signature, I say. That's more expensive than the roof. The judge interrupts the exchange so as not to turn the session into a family drama. I return to my seat, trembling at the knees. But inside there is silence, the sound of an arrow being fired. My mother gently squeezes my elbow. Sarah is called in. She confirms the forged credit forms. She points out how her father forced her to update her reports, threatening to cut her career line. The jury's eyes knot up in a knot of compassion. Austin is called in next. The brother walks out slowly, like a man walking on an empty beach after a storm. He approaches the podium, raises his head. His voice is deaf. I certify that a portion of the payments were deducted for my housing and tuition. I believed it was the right thing to do. The prosecutor asks if he benefited. Austin nods. The defense tries to ask a question, but my brother suddenly turns to me. Maddie, I'm sorry. The judge reminds us, answer the jury. Austin stares into the dark chairs, and I feel something inside me shift, not forgiveness, but letting go of the rope that's been pulling us back to the past. I don't answer. It's no longer my role. After an hour of debate, the judge retires for a conference. The hall smells of chewed-up fear. Clara whispers, We've shown the whole circuit. I nod and look out the window. Clouds drift like slow icebergs behind the murky glass. The judge returns. The jury announces the verdict. Guilty on all counts. Tax evasion, financial pressure, forging signatures. The judge orders assets blocked in favor of the Victims' Compensation Fund, including my account and Sarah's. Dad clenches his hands, stares at the floor. Sentence: imprisonment for 10 years without parole for the first 5. The judge recommends therapy for family victims of economic abuse. There is silence in the hall at first, then someone sighs. I don't feel triumph, only lightness, as if a stone has been rolling and finally hit the wall. On the courthouse steps, the wind carries moisture. My mother approaches, her posture straight, her voice quiet but confident. The clinic in Portland is waiting. I can transfer right after the quarter. Will you come with me? I look at her. There's no longer a quivering, "Can I?" in her eyes. She's asking as an equal. I'm going to my place. I smile. I want to try to build not a hospital, but a house, even out of boxes. Clara shakes my hand. Rest is work, too. Sarah walks over, holding a patch bag of documents under her arm, now a proven witness. We take a picture on Clara's phone. 4 women, tired and free. In the evening, I return to our rented apartment. My mother is putting things away. A few dresses for Portland, a lilac pattern, a robe with reflective stripes. I help her pack the boxes and call a cab for the morning. She goes to bed in child's pose, for the first time without sedatives. I stay in the empty living room. On the floor are cardboard boxes, my own $347, and a check for the first installment of compensation sent to my new account. The papers rustle like a ticket to uncertainty. I put the kettle on, open the window, humid air, the smell of coffee from the corner bakery, the distant signal of a boat horn. The street buzzes with cars, and in every honk, I hear someone else's choice to live. I look at the palms of my hands. They are clean, without the seals of debt. I close my eyes and whisper to myself, silence costs them everything, but a word costs me my freedom. A warm rumble grows in my chest. I take a step toward the window, and outside the glass, the evening city scatters neon lights like coins. Only these coins don't need to be collected, just seen. I take a deep breath, and the air is filled with a new exchange rate. Not currency, but life.
Любі глядачі, дякую вам за перегляд, ставте лайки та підписуйтесь на канал. Також напишіть в коментарях, чи погоджуєтесь ви з Дженніфер, чи вона мала розказати все матері, чи ні, чи мала все розказати своєму коханцю щодо свого чоловіка, чи ні. І також прокоментуйте, чи вам сподобалось це відео.